So, you're looking to fundraise in North Carolina? Well, there's one key thing you absolutely need to know to stay compliant. In this explainer, we're going to break down the specific rules for charitable solicitation in the Tar Heel state, so you can focus on your mission and not on a mountain of paperwork.
Hey everyone, welcome to our multi-state fundraising compliance series. We're here to break down these really complex topics into practical, easy-to-understand guides. And this is all brought to you by the experts at Ironwood Registrations.
Okay, let's kick things off with the single most important rule in North Carolina. And I mean, this is it. This isn't something you can just do later. The state is crystal clear. You have to get that license before you start asking for even a single dollar. Honestly, getting this right from the start is what prevents so many headaches down the road.
So, to make sure we're doing everything by the book, we first have to understand the basics, right? Like, who's actually making the rules, and what kind of activities do those rules even cover?
The agency in charge here is the North Carolina Secretary of State, and specifically, it's their Charitable Solicitation Licensing Division. This is the office that handles the registry and pretty much oversees all compliance with the state's fundraising laws.
When it comes to the definition of solicitation, well, North Carolina's is incredibly broad. I mean, it's basically any request for a contribution from the public. The big takeaway here is that it doesn't really matter how you ask. It's the fact that you're asking at all that counts.
And yeah, that broad definition covers just about everything you can think of. We're talking about that donate button on your website, all your email and social media campaigns, any direct mail you send out, phone calls, and of course, any fundraising events you hold. If your message can reach a potential donor in North Carolina, you guessed it, it counts as solicitation.
Now, here's a really critical exception, and it's pretty unique to North Carolina. Applying for grants from government agencies or other tax-exempt foundations is not considered solicitation. This is a huge deal, and it's a distinction that could save your organization from going through the registration process when you don't actually need to.
All right, so you've figured out you need to register. Let's walk through the next logical step. How do you actually file that initial application?
The process really boils down to three main steps. First, you've got to get all your required documents together. Second, you file the application itself, and you can do that either online or by mail. And then third, if you happen to be working with professional fundraisers, there are some extra disclosures you'll need to include.
So what do you actually need to pull together? Well, you'll need your organization's legal paperwork, like your articles of incorporation, your IRS determination letter that proves your tax-exempt status, your most recent IRS Form 990, and a current list of your officers and directors.
Okay, now for the part that every finance and operations team needs to have circled on their calendar: the fees, the renewal schedules, and those all-important deadlines. North Carolina uses a tiered fee structure, and it's all based on your annual contributions. As you can see, if you raise under $25,000, there's actually no fee. Then the fee scales up, and it tops out at $200 for organizations that raise over $200,000. And just remember, those government and foundation grants we talked about, they don't count in this calculation.
Now, for the deadline, this is a big one. Your annual renewal is due 4.5 months after your fiscal year ends. You've got to get that date on your calendar. So, for example, if you run on a regular calendar year, your deadline is always going to be May 15th.
And you definitely want to hit that deadline. North Carolina's penalty for filing late is pretty straightforward. It's $25 for every single month that you're overdue. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but it can definitely add up and create some compliance headaches, so it's always just better to file on time.
Okay, let's dive into a really important topic: exemptions. See, not every organization that fundraises in North Carolina actually needs to file for a full license, but the rules are very specific. So, the most common exemption is for smaller organizations. If your nonprofit gets less than $50,000 in contributions a year, and you don't pay anyone to fundraise for you, you can probably claim an exemption. But, and this is the part that trips people up, you still have to file an exemption request form with a state every single year to claim it. It's not automatic.
Now, there are a few other types of organizations that get a bit of an easier path, so to speak. Certain religious institutions, accredited schools, and some government-related organizations are usually exempt automatically, which means they don't need to file any paperwork to claim that status.
A question we get all the time is, but what if we aren't even located in North Carolina? So let's clear up how these rules apply to nonprofits that are fundraising from outside the state.
The rule here is super simple, but it is absolutely vital. It doesn't matter where your office is, what matters is where your donors are.
If you are asking for contributions from people who live in North Carolina, the law applies to you, period. And you have to register unless you qualify for an exemption.
You know, getting registered is really just the first step. True compliance is an ongoing process, so let's take a look at what it takes to maintain your good standing year after year.
Think of it like a simple checklist for long-term success. First, you have to track those renewal deadlines. Second, keep an eye on your contribution levels so you're paying the right fee. Third, make sure all your financial reporting is accurate and complete. And fourth, if you're exempt, you have to confirm every year that you still meet the criteria.
And that really brings us to the main takeaway here. You just can't assume that what works in one state is going to work in another. North Carolina's approach, especially with that grant funding rule and its exemption filing requirements, is pretty unique. It's a key piece of the puzzle in any multi-state fundraising strategy.
So this brings us to a final question for you and your team to think about. As you plan out all your development activities, have you really truly accounted for the specific requirements of North Carolina's compliance landscape? Because the rules require you to have a license before you fundraise, being proactive is absolutely everything. If your organization needs a hand managing registrations in North Carolina or across multiple states, the specialists at Ironwood Registrations can definitely help. You can learn more over at ironwoodregistrations.com. Thanks so much for tuning in.